It started with one bullet, but it destroyed empires. June 28, 1914, Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by a 19-year-old student named Gavrilo Princip. That moment sent shock waves across Europe. What seemed like a local tragedy soon became a global catastrophe. Behind the gunfire was something deeper, decades of rivalry, alliances, and pride waiting to explode. Europe in 1914 was a powder keg. Nations had armed themselves to the teeth, tangled in webs of military agreements. Germany, France, Russia, and Britain all stood ready for war, though no one truly wanted it. When the Archduke fell, Austria blamed Serbia. Serbia turned to Russia. Germany promised to defend Austria. France stood with Russia, and Britain guarded Belgium. Within a few weeks, telegrams turned into mobilization orders. Crowds cheered, believing it would be a short, glorious war. But no one could imagine the horror that awaited them. Trenches, gas, and 4 years of death. This wasn't just a war of armies. It was a war of entire civilizations. Welcome to History War Chronicles, where we uncover how one bullet changed the course of history forever. Part 1. The Powder Keg of Europe. Before the first shot was ever fired, Europe was already on edge. For decades, powerful nations competed for territory, influence, and pride. Germany, newly unified, wanted to prove itself as Europe's dominant empire. France still burned for revenge after losing Alsace and Lorraine to Germany in 1871. Russia sought control over the Balkans, while Britain fought to protect its global empire. The continent was divided into two massive alliances: the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. These alliances were meant to prevent war through balance, but they created the opposite: a trap. A crisis anywhere could pull every major power into conflict. And that's exactly what happened in 1914. The Balkans, called the Powder Keg of Europe, were a hotbed of ethnic tension and nationalism. As the Ottoman Empire declined, new nations like Serbia and Bulgaria emerged, each dreaming of expansion. Austria-Hungary feared these ambitions, worried they'd inspire its own minorities to rebel. So when Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist, Austria saw an opportunity to crush Serbia once and for all. But it was no longer a regional affair. It was the spark that ignited the most destructive chain reaction in human history. Part 2. The alliances turned to war. After the assassination, Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia, filled with impossible demands. Serbia accepted most, but refused one that threatened its sovereignty. That was all Austria needed. On July 28, 1914, it declared war. Russia, protector of Slavic nations, began mobilizing its army to defend Serbia. Germany warned Russia to stop, but Russia ignored the threat. On August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia, and 2 days later, on France. Following a strict military plan, Germany invaded Belgium to reach France quickly. But Belgium's neutrality was guaranteed by Britain. When German troops crossed its border, Britain declared war on Germany on August 4th. The dominoes had fallen. Within days, nearly every major European power was at war. Ordinary citizens watched trains full of soldiers leave their cities. Flags waved, bands played, and everyone believed the war would be over by Christmas. Instead, it would drag on for more than 4 years. Across Europe, factories began producing weapons at an industrial scale. Posters called for men to enlist, and millions answered. But beneath the pride and patriotism, the world was walking into a nightmare, a war unlike anything seen before, where machines, trenches, and gas would redefine what it meant to fight and to die. Part 3. The fall of illusions. By late 1914, the illusion of a quick victory was gone. Germany's plan to defeat France swiftly, the Schlieffen Plan, had failed at the Battle of the Marne. Both sides dug into defensive positions stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland. The Western Front became a living graveyard of mud and misery. Soldiers faced constant artillery bombardments, machine gun fire, and poison gas. Every inch of land was soaked in blood. Trench warfare was unlike anything before. Conditions were brutal: rats, lice, freezing water, and the constant fear of death. The stench of decay filled the air. Weeks of fighting could gain a few meters, only to lose them again. By Christmas, exhausted soldiers from both sides did something remarkable. They laid down their arms. Across no man's land, British and German troops shared cigarettes, food, and songs. For a brief night, humanity returned to the front lines. But by dawn, the war resumed, deadlier than before. New weapons arrived: flamethrowers, tanks, and artillery that could flatten cities. The war to end all wars was devouring an entire generation. Millions were dead or missing, and yet the war showed no sign of ending. Europe had become a machine of destruction, and it could no longer stop itself. Part 4. The world engulfed. By 1915, the conflict had spread beyond Europe. The Ottoman Empire joined Germany and Austria-Hungary, turning the Middle East into another front. Battles raged in Africa, Asia, and across the oceans. Colonial soldiers from India, Africa, and Australia fought under the flags of their empires. The war was now global. On the Western Front, trench warfare became a nightmare of gas attacks and constant shelling. The Battle of Verdun and the Somme in 1916 turned fields into slaughterhouses. Hundreds of thousands died for a few miles of land. In the East, Russia struggled under the weight of its losses. Shortages, poor leadership, and exhaustion pushed the Russian people toward revolution. By 1917, a new player entered the war: the United States. After German submarines sank civilian ships, America joined the Allies, bringing fresh troops and supplies that would shift the balance. The arrival of American forces boosted morale, while Germany's allies began to collapse. The Ottoman Empire crumbled, Austria-Hungary fractured, and Germany faced starvation and revolt at home. After 4 years of unimaginable suffering, the German government finally surrendered. On November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent. The Great War was over, but peace would come with a price. The war that never ended. When the war ended, Europe was unrecognizable. Empires, German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian, had vanished. New nations were born from their ruins. Over 16 million people were dead, and millions more scarred for life. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, blamed Germany entirely and demanded crushing reparations. The world hoped this treaty would secure lasting peace, but it planted seeds of anger, humiliation, and revenge. Germany felt betrayed. Its economy collapsed, and its people grew desperate. Across the continent, bitterness lingered. The promise that this had been the war to end all wars quickly turned hollow. In the years that followed, a new kind of leader would rise, one who fed on hatred, fear, and nationalism. His name would be Adolf Hitler. Just 20 years after the guns of World War I fell silent, the world would once again march toward chaos. But that is a story for another time. This has been History War Chronicles, where we uncover the untold truths of our past. If you found this story powerful, like, share, and subscribe. Because understanding history is the first step to never repeating it.